Hello, everyone. You're watching Sexpertise. I'm your favorite host and sexpert, the Erica Rivera. Today is a very interesting episode as we're going to be integrating politics and sexual health. We're going to have a very candid conversation with former candidate for state representative here in Florida for District 19, Adam Morley. So please, let's welcome Adam. Hi, Adam.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being here today.
I appreciate the invite.
So, we're going to have this conversation. I don't know if you've had interviews like this before where we talk about sex and politics. Maybe, maybe not.
Not quite. Lots of casual conversations, no official interviews.
Well, I appreciate it putting it on such a public platform, but I feel like it's something that's important to discuss, especially post-election. So, speaking of that, what were some of the main issues that you focused on during your campaign for District 19? And how did some of those issues that you focused on intersect with broader topics of public health, including reproductive rights?
So my platform was catered really to people across the political spectrum. I was really focusing on the basics, kind of the common ground issues that everybody could agree on, regardless of their political affiliation. So, for my area, things like slowing the growth, halting the overdevelopment, being smarter about the growth that we see in our communities, focusing on things like home rule and local control. That's our ability to govern ourselves as a community, and then also the clean water. Clean water is a issue that impacts everybody. Clean water is the economic driver to our state, and making sure that we have clean, healthy water resources was a top priority of mine. With me being a captain, my background as a captain, I understand how important this resource focuses. And along the campaign trail, I would always be asked about these other issues, including reproductive rights and all of that. And it pained me to have to let people know this and kind of educate people along the way. For 20 years, we have had a single party control in the state legislature. The House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion has all not just been under one control, it's been a super majority control. So a lot of these issues that I would call like hot topics or the hot button issues, right, even if I did win, if I won or if I lost, it wouldn't have mattered, because what they want, they get. They have total control. So me running on a reproductive platform wouldn't change anything, because they have the votes. There's 120 state representatives total, and the supermajority of those are all Republican that are following the same narrative, the same party line votes. So until we as voters start to really understand that there's no balance in the legislature, I chose to focus on the basics that we could all agree on, focus on things that I'm more capable and qualified for addressing. Because while I support women's reproductive health, there's not really a lot of progress to be made until we balance the legislature.
That is so interesting. I actually did not realize that there was such an imbalance, and that's why certain candidates focus on certain topics that they can, I guess you can say, influence. So that's really good to know, because I'm sure there's, at least for my listeners, I'm sure they're wondering why maybe there wasn't more awareness to some of those particular topics, and this kind of explains that. So in recent years, many states, including us here in Florida, have seen legislative changes around those types of issues, contraceptive access, sex education in schools. What do you see as the most significant impacts of these laws on the health and autonomy of Floridians?
Well, just like with home rule and local control, Tallahassee has a very specific idea about what they want. And that's ultimately what we are going to get until we reach that tipping point and people say, okay, we've gone too far. Um, Florida is the first state that I'm aware of that actually put the limited government interference with women's reproductive rights on the ballot. It failed. The only state that amendment failed. There's a lot of things that go into why it failed. We have one of the highest thresholds that need to be met in order for it to pass at 60%.
Yeah.
And in 2026, it goes up to 70%. So I don't expect to see any constitutional amendments pass going forward, probably for decades to come, until we restore balance in the legislature and start really upholding the will of the people rather than the machine that is in control of the state at the moment.
So, I mean, technically, having that on the ballot really meant progress, but raising that percentage to 70% kind of makes it, I don't know, almost, I mean, at first hand, it feels like we're being set up for failure. But yeah, okay, silver
Yeah,
lining, it was on the ballot.
it was on the ballot, which was great. It didn't pass, but it had the majority. It
Yeah.
still had the majority of Floridians in a very red state. So obviously, this is an issue that people across the political spectrum care about because of the votes that it got. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. It fell 2 point something percent shy of the threshold. And now going into 2026, like any constitutional amendment is going to need 70% to pass. And that's just that's not doable. Like, you're not going to see a 70% agreement on a constitutional amendment. So unfortunately, not just on that issue, but on any issue going forward, we are 100% reliant on the legislature following the will of the people. And based on the recent history over the last 15 years, that's not happening.
Right, right. But in order to fight back too, we also need more voters in the polls because I've been seeing how we didn't have as many voters as there could have been. And I'm wondering if that could have made the difference as far as that 60%. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but it's that was a little frustrating, at least on my end, to see that.
Yeah, I don't have any real comments on that. That's above my pay grade as far as
Yeah.
strategy and turnout goes for the overall state.
Yeah.
But based on what I'm seeing, the majority of people, even in my district, which is where I was heavily focused, because I'm very much focused on my community and what I can do to benefit the community. And I saw that the overwhelming majority of people in my district, they were in support
Yeah.
of it. Statewide, it did fall short.
Yeah. Now, we'll look at the bigger picture. With the recent presidential election results and continued influence, like political figures like Trump, what are some challenges or changes that you foresee in policies related to sex health or even LGBTQ rights, at least at the state level here in Florida?
So I kind of see Florida as leading the way in the direction we are going as a country. It seems to be kind of this testing grounds for a lot of policies that folks may or may not agree with, but ultimately become more of a nationwide trend, kind of start that nationwide trend. And my concern here and what I foresee happening, and this is, again, just me based on what I'm seeing, having been involved in, having been focused on state house for nearly 10 years and really being engaged in the state level politics, what we are seeing, and I don't talk a lot about this. I try to kind of tiptoe around it because it's popular, but it's not what the Constitution calls for. And that is honestly the influence of Christianity in the Republicans' platform. I am all for the First Amendment and people's right to believe and practice whatever religion they would like. But when we start getting laws passed based on a specific religion that everybody has to follow, that's when we start getting into real scary territory. And that's what my concern is, and what I see happening as we move forward is you have a outsized Christian influence over the Republican Party, which has a supermajority control over the state. So ultimately, if there's a push to remove rights for any of the minority groups, that's the direction that it's going, unfortunately. And until we figure out a way to turn the tides where people are able to really see that, I think that's the direction we're going to continue to go.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole Christian influence too. And my listeners know this. I'm a Christian and I'm someone that goes to church every Sunday, but even I don't feel like it's okay to basically force a country to follow my religion or to follow my beliefs, to follow one belief system when we are a melting pot of different cultures and beliefs. And so yeah, so that bothers me as well. And it brings me to my next point too. Access to sexual health resources sometimes is very dependent on some of those policies that are based on faith. And that access to resources and information can vary widely based on local policies and the school curriculum. How do you believe state representatives and lawmakers can support access to comprehensive and inclusive sex education, regardless of the political party? Like, what do you think is the best way for lawmakers to support that?
Well, that's pretty easy. Listen to the experts in the community and implement the ideas. The problem is that there's an unwillingness to do so. Again, with that supermajority, the same way they can support anything, they focus on it, they work on it to help provide better access. But again, because of the influence and typically their backers' ideologies, they're not interested in supporting it. They're interested in repealing it. We know that like Hobby Lobby and other like large campaign contributors are backing and supporting candidates that are going to, and don't get me wrong, a lot of these candidates, they don't act, or candidates or legislate the bills anymore. They're not even the ones writing the bills. What's happening is we're getting, again, it goes back to money and politics. We are getting these corporate interests, these moneyed interests that have their own agenda, funding candidates to get them into office. And then once they're in office, those same moneyed interests have the army of lawyers and lobbyists that say, here, we drafted this bill. Can you just put your name on it and propose it? We gave you that large campaign contribution. A lot of these legislators are not even writing the bills anymore. They are simply introducing the legislation that is provided to them through the folks who funded their campaigns. And that's
Wow.
what a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it's not even an old school way of thinking. It's being controlled by money. It's
It's
being
being
controlled by
controlled by money.
finances.
And
Yeah.
I learned that years ago when my wife and we owned a recycling company. And it's a short story, but I'm going to try to keep it shorter. So my wife and I owned a recycling company years ago, and it was a small business. It was a startup, and we started doing really well. We started taking customers. We started competing on what we thought was supposed to be a level playing field, a free market. And we started competing, and we started winning over customers from some of the largest companies in Florida and even in the nation that had branches here in Florida. When we started taking their customers away, rather than innovating and coming up with a better service to provide to customers, we started getting hit by a bunch of fees and permits from the state. And I understand as a small business owner, it's the apprehension towards government, thinking, oh, government is holding me down, government is holding me down, and wanting to be spiteful towards government because as a small business, you get all these regulations, all these regulations. I dug deeper into it. These new permits and these new fees, none of the legislators were involved in the recycling industry. None of them knew what was going on. So I traced where these bills came from, and they were provided to the legislators by my competition, who was funding the legislators. So they don't even have to compete with small businesses anymore. They can just go straight to the source of regulation. And sure, $500 here, $1,000 there isn't going to hurt a large corporation that's got an army of lawyers and lobbyists. But for small businesses, those nickeling and dining us with all of these fees and permits, that hurts a upstart business. And ultimately, that's what I found out, is that it's not government that is hard on small businesses. It's the titans of those industries that don't want to compete with us, that are passing those regulations, that are getting those laws passed that hold us as entrepreneurs and innovators back. And that was years ago, and that was one of the things that really inspired me to run, was to stand in opposition to that kind of policy making.
Right, but that story is totally relatable to this because we often question, well, why isn't more getting done when it comes to reproductive rights? I mean, myself, I've been a sex educator for over 12, 13 years now, and I've seen very little progress to accessible sexual health information in that decade. And people like myself, supporters, we often wonder, why isn't there more getting done? Why aren't people talking about it? Why aren't politicians more involved, lawmakers more involved? Well, here's why: we don't have a big enough supporter with deep pockets to make sure that we are pushing that forward, that support for, comprehensive education. Man, that is a sad reality.
Isn't it? I,
Oh.
2024 was my last run as a candidate, and it really took a toll on me, because having run for 10 years and having been as engaged and seeing the process unfold for 10 years, it really discouraged me. And at this point, I've decided that I'm just going to focus on business, make money, and try to support the folks doing good in my community that way, because the policy making route, until the supporters of the current party in control start to realize that they're simply being taken advantage of for their vote, and they're being bought. They're simply confirming what the machine is giving them. When they realize it's no longer working for them and they start to look for other options, that's when we'll start to see change. Until then, I'm just going to focus on me and my community, my family, make sure that we are helping each other out, because I do see rough times ahead, especially in the environmental community, the clean water, the land preservation, and making sure we slow overdevelopment. All those issues, we're going to see it take a big hit in the coming years.
Yeah, and I think too, I think it's important, just like you're focusing more locally, you're doing what you can within your power. From your experience, what do you think the general public, especially voters, should know or should do to kind of be supportive? I mean, knowing this reality, what they should know about local laws and policies that can impact them, and how they can continue to support. Like, what can we do? I know it's not much, but
I honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say to that other than quote Mr. Rogers and look for those doing good. Look for the good because we can get very discouraged, and people will be getting very discouraged going forward, seeing what's happening. So just look for the good, look for the folks that are doing good in the community, and kind of insulate yourself that way until, like I said, until the voting masses kind of wake up. And I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I look back at my race. I'm born and raised in my district. I own businesses here, super involved in the community, have broad political spectrum support. And I lost to somebody who moved here just this year, the same day he bought a house. He filed to run for office. He was handpicked by the political machine. Nobody knew who he was. He didn't campaign. He didn't show up for any interviews, didn't do anything. And he still got nearly 60% of the vote because people showed up and voted party line without getting informed. That's the biggest thing for me, was that 10 years of working for this, reaching out to people. I don't think a lot of people understand the volume of people that are actually in our community that are not in our social spheres, not really engaged, but just what we should call average people.
Yeah.
The number of average people who are not engaged enough to really know what's going on, but for whatever reason, social conditioning or whatnot, show up and vote party line without actually looking into races. Those are the folks that are literally being taken advantage of by their own party machine.
But yet here you were showing up to everything, putting in the work, making sure people were educated. And, you know, a lot of times I've had conversations with you. You stay pretty nonpartisan in your discussions about things. So you've done everything respectfully. It's crazy to me that he was a no-show and still got the vote.
And I grew up in a rural conservative district. I understand, like, I was NPA before I started running, no party affiliation. I was running for my community, not for a party, not to support a party. I chose the party because, honestly, it was kind of the same thing that the Republicans do. By running as a Democrat, there were 28,000 votes that I could count on because they were going to show up and vote party line for Democrats. Wow. That's 28,000 votes off the bat that I was able to count on, and then I just had to work on reaching the other folks. If I ran as NPA or independent, I wouldn't have gotten a total of maybe 10,000 votes. So yeah, there's a lot of games to be played in the two-party system, and right now there's one party that holds total control, and they own the game right now.
Yeah. And even though they own the game, if you're listening right now, Adam may not say it, but I'll say it. Stop voting like it's two football teams, please. It's not a football game. It's not, like, come on.
It's not. And I didn't even vote a straight party ticket. There were candidates I crossed back and forth depending on the race because I looked at it. I do not support the slogans and the rhetoric of vote just this way down the ticket. That is very dangerous, and that's going to get us results that we don't want.
Exactly. Because I'm fairly sick of seeing it being kind of portrayed that way, and it's marketed that way, and it's put in our faces that way. It's red versus blue versus red. I'm a registered Democrat, but I don't even believe in voting full blue. Like, if that's not, I do my research. If the Dem candidate isn't for the policies or the laws that make sense to me, why would I vote for them? It has nothing to do with their party. So I just wish more people, you know, those of you listening, listen closely. Like, it's not a football game. So that's really important.
And one other thing that I'd like to say to the voters out there, you don't have to vote in every race. If you don't like either of the candidates or you don't agree with their policies, you don't even have to vote in that race.
Leave that bubble blank if you
Leave the
don't like
leave
either one.
leave the bubbles blank. You don't have to fill in a bubble in every race.
Yeah.
Find the races, find the candidates that you like and support and vote for them. Voting is voting. Vote for what you want. If you have an option of two candidates that neither one is what you want, it's okay not to vote. Don't let the idea of not knowing everybody on the ballot stop you from showing up and supporting the candidates that you do support.
Correct. So yeah, so because we do say, please vote. But if you're someone who is not really knowledgeable or you are against maybe both candidates, it's okay to just vote for the people that you have heard of and that you align with. But it could also be detrimental when you just vote to vote. When you're just like, well, I'm gonna just pick one. Don't do that. And I think what Adam is saying too, correct me if I'm wrong, when you were talking about supporting the people doing good, not to plug myself in, but it is my show. Supporting things like this is an educational platform, so if you're someone that wants to see more of that conversation around reproductive rights, fighting for women's rights, sexual health education, especially for teens, in order to prevent sexual assault and things of that nature. Those are some major issues, but there's not a lot of us talking about it. I'm one of the few. And so supporting the show, supporting, so the nonprofit, the National Care Foundation, you guys have heard me talk about that nonprofit a couple times where we focus on sexual assault prevention. But I think, there's power in numbers. So it's very hard to make a difference by ourselves. It's, especially when we just discussed that money really is the driving force behind a lot of these bills that get put in place. So Adam can't make a difference by himself. I cannot make a difference by myself. So if you're supporting some of those smaller voices here within your local community, then we can become one larger voice and one bigger team. So at least that was my takeaway from that last question.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So now I would love, we're already at the end. These interviews go so quickly, but I feel like I could sit here for another 30 minutes with you. I am going to put up your social. Please let us know how else we can get in touch, what you're working on, anything that you would like to plug in right now.
Yeah, the best way, I'm not running for office again, but I'm not going anywhere either. So I am going to stay engaged on the issues. I recommend people following me on social media. Facebook is probably my most active site, but I'm also on Instagram and the other social medias. Reach out to me if you are interested in those things that I ran on, which is slowing the overdevelopment in our community, protecting clean water resources, and making sure that we have a right to govern ourselves. Tallahassee, again, passing a lot of preemption laws. We as a community should be able to govern ourselves on a lot of these issues. So if those are things that you are interested in learning more about or passionate about, find me on social media, Adam Morley, and reach out to me.
Yes, and you are very active on Facebook. I love seeing the conversations brewing there. Even when there are negative comments, I love how it's just, we have to be more open about these things. We really do. People say, don't talk religion, don't talk politics. But at the same time, we have to remain informed. We have to be educated, and that's the way to do it.
For anybody coming onto my page, please just remain respectful, keep it nonpartisan, make sure that you're putting some thoughtful, constructive feedback into those comments. My platform, I don't want it to be just a battleground. I want it to be someplace that people can have a conversation, get to know other perspectives, and maybe find a solution forward.
Yep, perfect. Thank you so much, Adam, for being here. Really appreciate you. And for those of you listening, like I always say, please stay informed, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye.